our colleagues in the minority and in the Senate to create a solution to grant IG's testimonial subpoena authority. I'll thank our witnesses again for your service to our country and for your appearance today. And with that, I would recognize the gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for calling this hearing. Inspectors General serve a critical role by providing an independent check on the executive branch. They investigate waste, fraud, abuse, and they provide recommendations to improve agency performance. I want to thank each of the IGs who is testifying here today, and I want to thank all of the IGs who do a phenomenal job in the various agencies. The work that you and your staff members do is more important now than ever. The Oversight Committee is the primary investigative body in the House, and we rely tremendously on IGs in conducting our own oversight work. Let me address one key example. In 2015, this committee launched a bipartisan investigation following revelations by John Roth, who's present with us today, the IG at the Department of Homeland Security. Mr. Roth identified grave concerns about security deficiencies at our nation's airports. As part of our investigation, our committee heard from numerous whistleblowers who bravely reported security problems at airports and management challenges faced by the Transportation Security Administration. Some of those individuals alleged that TSA retaliated against them for making those disclosures. In March, Carolyn Lerner, who was serving as the special counsel, testified before our committee that TSA was refusing to provide information about whistleblower cases. She also testified that TSA was impairing the ability of the special counsel to fully investigate those cases. On March 6, 2017, our former chairman, Jason Chaffetz, sent a letter to TSA requesting the information that TSA was withholding. The acting general counsel at DHS responded that the agency, quote, objects to the demand, end of quote, that it provide these documents to the committee. So on March 17, 2017, the committee issued a subpoena for these documents. But DHS, listen to this, DHS still refused to turn over the documents. On March 31st, 2017, the acting general counsel sent a letter to the committee writing that the agency is, and I quote, not in a position to produce those documents at this time. That was in March. To address this refusal, Chairman Chaffetz and I joined together in sending a bipartisan letter to the acting administrator of TSA warning that, quote, failure to comply with a congressional subpoena may result in serious consequences for you, end of quote. We also requested transcribed interviews with 3 TSA employees, Deputy Administrator, an Acting Assistant Administrator, and the Chief Counsel. None of these witnesses voluntarily complied with our requests, which we made in May. In the meantime, Mr. Roth has continued his oversight work, and he has issued 2 classified reports in recent weeks with critical warnings that many security problems remain unresolved. Listen up, listen up. I've often said that if we find out about our problems as members of Congress and then we fail to act on them when we have been given the authority by the American people, then we become a part of the problem. So I appreciate that the Chairman Gowdy, agreed to join me in sending a letter to TSA to request documents related to the IG's findings. But that request has nothing to do with the documents that are being withheld about the whistleblowers. We must also take action to compel TSA to comply with the committee's subpoena, which TSA has been defying for 8 months. Yesterday, I sent a letter to Chairman Gowdy laying all of this out and requesting that the committee enforce its subpoena for these documents. I also requested deposition subpoenas for the 3 TSA officials who have refused to participate in transcribed interviews. These are issues my staff have been raising for several weeks, if not months. Here's the bottom line. I do not believe that we can afford to wait. The security of air travel is not a partisan issue. Every person who flies on an airplane, works in an airport, or drives to the airport to pick up a family member wants to know that they will be safe. God forbid, if something terrible were to happen, I want to know that we did everything, every single thing in our power, to conduct vigorous oversight to protect the American people. That is what we are sworn to do. And in addition to that, if we do not protect these whistleblowers, if we let the agency defy this subpoena, and if we allow the agency to flout our interview requests, that will have a negative impact on whistleblowers across the board. And all of us know in this committee that a lot of our work and a lot of the waste, fraud, and abuse that we've been able to discover have been because people have sat at that table many times with tears in their eyes, trembling. They simply wanted their government to work properly, but they came forward bravely to offer evidence so that we could do our jobs. And so it will act as a deterrent to anyone who is thinking about coming forward to report dangerous security failures or anything else. And that, in turn, will damage our oversight efforts and the operations of our government. And with that, I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I would
Mr.
say,
Chairman,
yes, sir.
Chairman, for all these reasons, pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2K6, I hereby move to subpoena TSA officials Hubin Gawandia, Francine Kerner, and Stephen Colón to appear before this committee. And it is public knowledge, Mr. Chairman, that these folks allegedly were a part of the retaliation. That is my motion.
Well, I want to thank my friend from Maryland for a couple of things. Number one, for the passion with which he spoke on this issue. I've heard you do it before, and I know you mean every syllable of what you said. We should not have to resort to compulsory process to gain access to documents or witnesses, but I want every agency that's paying attention to know that we will. And you have my commitment. We are in one accord. You have my commitment, Mr. Cummings, that when you and I see each other in Baltimore, we're either going to have a date for a voluntary interview or we're going to have a date for an involuntary interview. But we're going to have a date with an interview to either gain access to the information or have a much better understanding of the legal basis by which this committee is being denied the information. And you have my commitment on that.
With that, Mr. Chairman, let me be clear so that everybody in the room knows when he says in Baltimore, he's just not coming for a walk in the park, although I'd like for him to come to my city to do that. We have that's our next hearing, members of the committee. With that, Mr. Chairman, I take your word, and I want to thank you for working with me and trying to resolve this issue. Mr. Chairman, it is embedded in the DNA of my brain, watching people tremble at that table trying to share their views and knowing that that they could be harmed. And so with that, I withdraw my motion, and I look forward to what we have on the 28th. Thank you.
Well, they have a powerful and persuasive advocate in you, and we are in one accord on this, and I appreciate you working with me on it. With that, all of us would welcome our witnesses. I will introduce you en banc and then